in there. There's only 27 states, but the numbers are revealing. We have, just from that single, the 27 states that the interstate cross-check program was matched with, in Massachusetts alone, there are 40,000 people registered to vote in Massachusetts and in New Hampshire at the same time. And I'm pretty sure quite a few of them are voting here and keeping their registration in Massachusetts. The fun part about having the interstate cross-check program and the states involved, when you say Virginia or when you say Indiana, pick a state, I can pretty much name someone we caught from that state. Like Missouri, we caught Caitlin Ann Legacki voting in Manchester, New Hampshire in November of 2012, and she voted in Missouri, same day. She voted both places. Caitlin Ann Legacki. We caught her both places. And we got video of her. Yeah, Granite Rock posted a video. And these guys have been posting this stuff for years. If you want to know about voter fraud and you want to see some pictures, obviously our website has photographs of some of the offenders. And then Granite Rock has been religiously pounding this as much as Rich has on the radio. Like, we're the repository for this stuff. When I call other states, they go, "You're the guy who caught so-and-so." And that so-and-so is usually Elena Biden. And Elena Biden, we caught Elena Biden. That's the vice president's niece. That vote thief was voting in Manchester at a known voter fraud residence, where we caught Caitlin Ann Legacki. And we just caught somebody else. Mashira Akina Davis, 2016. She came out of Detroit. She came to Manchester. She stayed in a known voter fraud nest that still operates. She voted here, and I'm gonna explain to you what is at stake. So since Donald Trump, President Trump, has started this commission, he has put people on it like Chris Kobach, and the vice president is in charge. He also put Ken Blackwell on this committee. Ken Blackwell is a former Secretary of State of rain hard. Okay. Hey, everybody, it's raining like the dickens outside if your windows are open. Or if you left something, paper on the roof of your car. Or your cell phone, like I have done in the past. So he put Ken Blackwell. Ken Blackwell was the former Secretary of State of Ohio. Ken Blackwell does not back down. He's been accused of all kinds of things. You know, racism, voter suppression, you name it. Ken Blackwell is in to win this thing. Another person that's on that committee is Mike Phelan, the head of the Republican Lawyers Association. I met him at Grover Norquist's meeting in 2001. He's a serious individual. And the guy they just put on, the most recent one, is a guy named Hans von Spakovsky. This guy works for the Heritage Foundation, and he is an anti-voter fraud, expert beyond compare. These guys know exactly what they're looking for. They're not going to get a bait and switch. They're not going to be afraid of being called names. And often when I send out an email or get an email back, they're on that email list. So they see what I send out from New Hampshire. I've been working with the guys in Virginia, in North Carolina, and a couple other states. And I was on a 4.5-hour phone call a couple weeks ago with a new group that's forming nationally, like a voter integrity group, that's linked up with the guys that have been working in states. I got to meet the voter fraud people from California, Florida, Ohio, Texas. We're going to have a bunch of them. There's 13 states so far, and it's growing. So we're going to be giving the President Trump's Voter Fraud Commission information. We're going to testify, and we're not going to put together a great big fat manual and hand it over and have it thrown in the dumpster. We're going to get an opportunity to go testify, and there's no way they can stop us from testifying because you're not going to hear anything. You're going to hear it from people who have actually been doing this, and I'm excited about it because, you know, when you see these commissions get put together, a lot of times they put people on that are going to stifle something. These guys have no interest in being made fools of. So I'm very happy to see that. I'm impressed with who he's picked so far. And there's some other guy, Bill Gardner's on it. It's like a placeholder. I'm not too concerned about that. But it is a good time to check this out. Now, what happens when you have experts looking at this? You get a big picture, not just so-and-so got caught doing this, and they might prosecute or it drifts away. We had recently 2 prosecutions that really opened the door into how voter fraud works nationally. One is in Harrisonburg Votes, Virginia, a young man, 20-year-old college student named Andrew Spiles. He got caught registering 18 or 19 dead people or people under the age, whatever. He got caught by the FBI. Now, he was investigated by the FBI. He got caught last October when someone else was president. He got prosecuted in June when someone else was president. So the FBI went and they took testimony, which I have here, 4 or 5 pages of testimony, and Andrew Spiles says, it was me alone. Andrew Spiles, this 20-year-old punk, figured out a way to change social security numbers and birth dates and middle initials and get those on the voter list in Virginia until he registered a brother of a judge that somebody at the county official recognized. So he got caught. But he says, it was me. I was the one that did it. He's going to serve 100, 120 days in jail. Okay, so there you go. In the FBI statement of facts, it says that young Andrew was registering dead people and helping other people do this, and that he had made notations on those documents when he sent them to a place called VAN. VAN. That's the D.C. organization that's been collecting this information. So if you're wondering why Republicans are getting stomped on the national elections, like here in New Hampshire, they have VAN working for them. It's actually NGP VAN. They just called it VAN there. So, okay, there's your link. That's what he was doing. This young kid, he takes the fall. About the same time in Indiana, of all places, the Indiana Votes, this new organization, comes to town, and they're going to register people, walk around in black neighborhoods. They targeted black neighborhoods. So it's a little bit like racist, isn't it? So they're going around, they're going to register this person, register that person. Well, 12 of them get caught and arrested. 11 of them are just young kids that were out making, $5 a name. Okay, so they all plead guilty. And I'm looking them up on the internet. He's a football star. This one, you can't find anything, just a young person. But the person who pled guilty, when the Indiana State Police barged into the headquarters of Indiana Votes, they barged in the back door. The front door's locked. Okay, so they set up a shop to register people to vote in a storefront in a mall, but we use the back door. It must be more convenient to do that, right? So the person in charge says she's in charge is Holiday Burke. I have about 15 pages that the Indiana State Police put together a statement of facts before the arrest. This is what I confess to. Okay, so Holiday Burke. So I posted a picture of Holiday Burke after the arrest on the internet, and she was kind of a heavy young lady with multicolored hair. But in the police reports, it says when Holiday Burke turned over her names to the county to be registered, she was a young, thin blonde with straight hair. So I look up Holiday Burke. I have 3 Holiday Burkes with 3 different birth dates, all the same phone number. Kind of odd, isn't it? So when the Indiana State Police came busting in and said, you're all, put your hands up, put your cell phones down, and close your laptops. I want to call my lawyer. State Police said, you're not calling anybody. We're taking your phone. They checked who they called. They checked the computers. Some of the back and forth between Van and Holiday Burke is now public record. I can read it. The other interesting thing about this was that they were all paid by an outfit called Block by Block. You ever hear of Block by Block? Probably haven't, because they have almost zero internet presence. So Block by Block. So here's who was paying them. Here's who they're connected with in D.C., and they're sending all their data into VAN. And they're registering dead people and altering things, same type of deal. So you look up Block by Block, and up comes this race in New Jersey. Some young guy's running for, I think, Congress or some seat. He spent $50,000 paying Block by Block, and a local reporter says, who's Block by Block? I can't find out who they are. I'm looking for this, looking for that. I got nothing on these people. So, turns out they're another storefront somewhere. They're associated with 5 or 6 other of these groups that come and go and come and go. Now, if you're going to do a decent job, and I was testifying to Mike Pence and these guys, Hans von Wachowski and the rest of these guys, I would say maybe it's time that when you catch these people who say they're in charge of collecting these names and say they're the person that they're doing this all on their own, maybe you should check out who's paying them. And you can get a little thing called conspiracy to commit voter fraud. Because when you have people say, oh, I plead guilty, I'm the one that did this, you could take the next logical step. If they do this, this shuts down one of the biggest corrupt operations in the United States political history. This thing, right now they're saying, oh, we can't turn over our information to President Trump's commission. All the secret data is on there. Andrew Spiles, that little punk from Virginia that got caught with making up 18 dead people's names and putting them on there, he started in 2015. He alone collected 2,000 names. Andrew Spiles had the complete Social Security number of every single person. So the Democrats are very concerned that, you know, if Bill Gardner sends our information into the commission, why anybody could get it. But they'll happily give it to Andrew Spiles and Holiday Burke, one of the 3 Holiday Burkes. You know, so this is where we're at. This is a golden opportunity to get involved in this and make sure your elected officials know you want something done. All the stars are aligned on voter fraud. These people do not want to back down. They want to prove what we have, the problem we have. And all the Democrats have, you know what? This issue is like a 70% issue. A lot of Democrats that are veterans and good, rock-solid, blue dog Democrats don't like voter fraud. Don't like it at all. This is a golden opportunity to see the progressives that have taken over the Democrat Party get booted out. And we go back to having arguments with people you can have an argument with, you know? Not we sell out everything we have to the progressives because they're running a Democrat Party and Democrats are voting along with them. Voter fraud is an issue which can divide the left and expose the people who have been doing this for a long time. And Mashira Akina Davis, she's a supervisor at NGP Van. That's why she's at that house of the lobbyist that lives in Manchester, lets Elena Biden and the rest of these people vote from his house, and no one prosecutes them. So that's, if there's a connection here. Oh, now here's the fun part. Holiday Burke has a list of phone numbers, has a list of different birth dates, has a list of phone numbers. One of them has a 603 prefix. But she's not known as Holiday Burke here in New Hampshire. She's got a different name. I got a question, Donna.
What's VAN? Tell us what you know about VAN.
NGP Van is a large, like Catalyst. It's a large data mining voter organization that collects information on voters and puts algorithms in. Like, you're buying country western albums, you know, and you're going to church 3 times a week. Let's not send you any information. You know, let's go to the guy that goes hiking somewhere, you know, to college students from a certain college. They analyze their voter database like crazy. You know, a lot of you people hand over stuff, you know, after elections, say, look at all the returns I got. The Democrats aren't getting them. I repeatedly hear people like Timothy Hargan, oh, I only get a handful of returns. That's funny. You know, who was it? Phyllis Woods. Stacks of them like this when she only mails the Republicans. The lists the Republicans have are just old lists. They're not cleaned up and laser beam on. Now remember, Andrew Spiles was sending in at least 18 dead people's registrations and noting on them to NGP Van. The guy we caught, here's one we caught. Thank you to, well, I guess I don't want to put him in jeopardy, but somebody tips us off that a guy was arrested in Hooksett on Election Day. So I did a little background search on him. This guy's name is Michael LaShawn Lewis. Goes into Hooksett and votes at 7 o'clock. Have you guys heard this one? All right, Michael LaShawn Lewis walks in to Hooksett to vote at 7 o'clock. Moderator says, 7 o'clock. He goes, oh, I was here. All right, fine, we'll let you vote. Let's see your ID. I don't have a driver's license, but I have the number from my Florida driver's license. He has the number from his Florida driver's license, but doesn't have the driver's license. All right? Okay, we're going to let you vote. Take the picture. I'm going to take a picture of the guy. It probably looks like the picture I have of him from his mug shot from a robbery. So there we go. Now I have his name. He gets arrested out in the parking lot right after he votes for rifling through cars. I got his birth date. I got the license plate number of his Massachusetts registered car. So when you say you go up to vote and there's these Massachusetts plates, oh, they're all people from New Hampshire. Michael LaShawn Lewis wasn't from New Hampshire. He was driving a rental car to New Hampshire from the airport to steal a vote in Hooksett at exactly 7 o'clock. I'm wondering, where was Michael LaShawn Lewis the rest of the day? He told the police that he came from Florida. So I track him down. He gave a fake address in Miami. The address was the Salvation Army. I track him down some of the address. He actually lives in Miami Beach, where he's a registered voter, and he voted early in 2016, I think on October 12th. On October 11th, he voted in Atlanta, Georgia, where he has a criminal record. He was a felon from there. So he's used early voting to steal 2 votes, one in Georgia and one in Florida. And then somehow he told the police he flew here from Miami, rented a car, and came to Hooksett to vote. So how do you rent a car and fly here from Miami without your driver's license? So I'm waiting for Michael LaShawn Lewis. He was arrested for not having a driver's license. He was supposed to show up in December in district court, and I'm down there waiting for him. He never showed up. The police said, well, if they're 3, 4, 5 states away, we don't bother tracking them down. So right now, Michael LaShawn Lewis got 3 votes in 2016. Georgia just had a hot election. I'm going to see if he was involved in that. I have to let that grind a little bit. I notified the officials in Florida, and where Hooksett knows. But that would be a golden opportunity if somebody was to arrest him and say, what happened? Who paid for the rental car? Or where did you get the rental car without a driver's license? Whose driver's license did you use? And the number that you gave us, I looked it up. In Florida, I can look up a Florida driver's license number, but I can't see the picture. You want to bet it's somebody else's picture on that driver's license? So voter fraud happens. It's sophisticated. It happens regularly, and they're bolder and bolder every time. There's a reporter in Concord, Tony Shinella, and he was, I think during the primary, somebody from the Hillary campaign, a guy named Charles Thuma IV. Does that sound right, Rich? Walks in and says, hi, I'm with the Hillary campaign. We're looking for Democrat voters. Tony says, well, I'm not a Democrat, my wife is. You're looking for her. And so what are you doing? He goes, I'm working for Hillary. Just left Iowa. I'm stationed in New Hampshire now. Oh, really? Yeah, I voted out there. And Tony said, you voted in Iowa? Yeah. Where are you from? From the same town Tony Chanel's from in Massachusetts. He goes, you can't vote out there. He goes, you better not vote here. You'll get caught. And he says, we're well aware of Mr. Nail. Isn't that sweet, right? So at least I had that effect. So he didn't vote here. We tracked him down. He was working for Hillary, staying someplace. He had an apartment. It'd be nice to see who paid for the apartment. But since we don't arrest him, we don't get the facts. I'm thinking there's going to be a lot more activity. Like when you set up a phony storefront to register black people and dead people, you pick the minorities to cheat like this in Mike Pence's state. That's how bold they are. The more arrests we see, the more information we're going to get. And I couldn't be more encouraged after almost 20 years of doing this. I think I started in 1996. Another question?
Yes. Who is funding this ban?
NGP ban, some of them pay. They pay for the list. And
who's funding the operation itself? Is it Soros?
Well, the one guy we caught, Carl Robert Gibson, who was supposed to be awaiting trial here, he was paid by Credo PAC. That's a left-wing PAC in San Francisco. They paid him, and he just got into a federal lawsuit with some guys over a website, and I'm getting a lot more information out of that. But they're paid by PACs and by wealthy businessmen.
Do you have any idea where the trail actually ends? I mean, the PACs are all funded by...
They just skip around. Those guys never get bagged. So the Indiana State Police pick up Holiday Burke. What do they have? Some loser that was in the office and said, yeah, it was me. All the other people in the office, there's some names in the arrest record. There's some names of people from D.C. They didn't get arrested. They just, whoop. She's the one that said, oh, it was me. She took the fall, just like Spiles. And Spiles didn't invent Harrisonburg votes. The Democrat Party put that together, and the people in D.C. put that together. We got to get the guys. There's a handful of people in D.C. that run this, and that's who should be drug in here. We tracked them. A lot of them voted here. The ones that were running Shaheen's campaign and working for Hillary back in 2012. They were here, and they're out of Georgetown University, a bunch of friends, and almost all of them are here, and they all have addresses in D.C. Vote thieves, and I put their names on the internet. Those guys are pros. No one goes after them, but we're going to see. I can't going to see more arrests, and more arrests are going to lead to more information. More information is going to benefit us.
Why are the sentences so light for this?
A lot of the voter frauds penalties in the different states are pretty weak. Because you'll talk to some guys. I think the guys in North Carolina said you'll get a longer sentence from stealing someone's pine mulch than you will for voter fraud. I guess they use pine tree mulch down there. But any other questions? It's a complicated issue. Rich Gerard covers it. Our CNHT website has pictures, and we're always doing stories. If you join, you'll get our updates from Jane. She sends out whatever I have. And Granite Rock. Shinella, Concord Patch, he does a fabulous job on this, and he goes and confronts Bill Gardner. Yep, in the back.
Any chance that they were going to revisit facilitation of voter fraud by a certain Seacoast state senator?
Yeah, what happened with Martha Full of voter fraud? Her place, she had up to 8 different people voting out of her house. And the AG's office, this was, yeah, Foster, but the guy that actually was doing it was Steve Labonte. Was the fun moron of an AG, assistant AG. He went down there, and what he said was, those people had established a presence. No, you have to establish a domicile. So he basically let them go. And one of them was, here's how you catch them. One of them was an attorney named Brian Gregory Griffith. He's an attorney in Arkansas. Arkansas has income tax. So once he's voted here and left, he has to file his income taxes. He can't tell Arkansas, oh yeah, for 4 months I established a presence at Martha Fuller Clark's house. They're going to go pay up because that's where his kids would go to school. That's where he's a member of the bar. His car is registered, his driver's license. Facts are facts. You know, we pretend like domicile doesn't mean domicile. We pretend that facts don't mean anything. Domicile is measured by the facts involved. Like, where did you pay your income taxes? So anytime we catch somebody, I catch somebody with an income tax state, that's where I really bear down, because I know if they call me, like some of these people have called, and they'll say, you know, have your parent hire an attorney and we'll do discovery. Go back and ask your dad what discovery is, and then they never call back.
This time it's coming from outside. There's no vested interest in sweeping it under. There's an actual interest in proving that the voter fraud has happened. And those statements were made in the last election. And let's hope that you use your connection to make sure they know to look at it from the outside, get some sunshine on it. It'd be great to have a New Hampshire State Senator indicted.
Yeah. Or the organization that helps them win.
Right.
Like there goes database, you know, there goes Catalyst, there goes the NBT event. One other thing is, I wasn't focused on the legislation here in New Hampshire. You know, Election Law Committee put a lot of work in passing a bill. I'm concerned about the federal. It's called U.S. Code 52, and it's Chapter 2, like 207, 209, 03. Any election official in any state shall comply with a written request of the U.S. Attorney General or his representative regarding an election of federal officers. Real easy to remember. I know Jeff Sessions knows what it means, and all he has to do is say, that commission is my representative. Trump appoints Sessions, right? Trump appoints the commission. They have an interest in getting information. This is not tough to do. And it's a gold opportunity. We can't sit back and be confused because they say, oh, you can't to me. So, all right. And I want to thank our volunteers. We have a bunch of people who help us out every year. Roger Wilson, Steve Negron, come on. Steve's going to come up and talk about voter fraud, veterans issues a little bit. We have Kim up now, I think.
Yes. Food. A lot of food.
Oh, there's a lot of food, so eating again.
Yes, no leftovers. We don't want that to hit the trash barrel. So, and for those of you who want to stay current on the voter fraud stuff, Ed is on the Draw Large radio show every Wednesday morning. For those of you who are up early, he's usually in by 6:20. For those of you who sleep through the morning, you can always catch him in the archives. All right, coming up next is Kimberly Morin. She anchors the political segment of as she is the proprietrix of nhpoliticalbuzz.com. I love Kim, because not only does she make me look sane, she is equally, if not more, tenacious on the local issues that we dig into each and every day on the radio show. She is a force to be reckoned with. Follow her on Twitter with 25,000 other people at Conservative ND, and stay up to date with what's happening here in the and beyond at NH Political Buzz. Kimberly Morin. No, I'm saying you making me look sad.
You have to make more. I'm an independent. I don't. I don't have any party bosses. So I want to talk a bit about Ed. Where'd he go? Ed was talking about with the Election Commission. Because you have Democrats throughout the state completely lying about the Election Commission. They think so little of their own supporters, of us as constituents, that they're lying to us and saying things that aren't true. House Minority Leader Steve sent out an email to all state representatives, lying in the email. He used fake news from CNN. And CNN, no, it really was fake news. CNN had in their title, 44 states refused to comply. If you looked at their actual report, that was BS. Wasn't true. 11 states refused, and part of that was because it's in state law. So Democrats are spreading lies. They're making their own vote look, honestly, like idiots. It's embarrassing. Because the facts are there. You can look right at the commission's letter, the actual letter that asks for certain things, only publicly available. There's no private information that's being, sold. That's what the Democrat does. But there's no information being given that anybody can't already get. Considering we're first in the nation state, thousands of people, political campaigns, organizations have voter information. I have some. I mean, it's old and passed off left and right. So the lies that the Democrats are telling, it's actually embarrassing for this state. I mean, we know they lie all the time, but this is beyond. This is just beyond, because they're making their own supporters look like idiots. And that, I'm not just saying that because these people are just mindless sheep. That's whatever. But it really is. It's bad that they're doing this, because this is an important issue. And the funny thing is, Obama had an election commission, and they recommended that states share voter database information with each other, which is exactly what Trump's election commission is trying to do. So, these little facts and these little things that are important to everyone need to be talked about out there. On a different note, how does it feel to have a state with a Republican-controlled everything, including the governor's office? I mean, I don't know about you guys. I was not a big fan of Governor Sununu before he ran. I will admit it. You can see it in my writing. But I'm a fan now. And it's part of the reason is because he is independent. I don't agree with him on everything. Full-day kindergarten. But he's been an independent governor, something I've never seen in New Hampshire since I lived here. All we had were the Democrat drones doing whatever their party told them. It didn't matter what the will of the people was. We have more freedom in this state since the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate, and since we have a Republican governor in the corner office, than we've had in combined 10 years of Democrat rule. Just a couple of huge bills. Constitutional carry. That's a huge bill. It ended state-sanctioned discrimination against every one of us. Then we have that Croydon bill, quote unquote. Oh, yeah. That gave school children freedom. Yep. So, and then we have the decrim bill that's going to be coming up that he's going to sign. We have a lot more freedom now in the live free or die state than under Maggie Hassan or Lynch. And this is why we have to keep it going. God help us if Democrats ever get control again. And it's only because the Democrat in this state has been taken over by the extreme left wing. But here's, everybody gets excited about working on campaigns and come out and they try to push for everybody. You can't stop after the campaign's over. You have to support these all year round. The left had hundreds of people coming here. They have millions of dollars in this state all year round to fight against whatever the rest of the state wants. Just last week, Jason Kander, who's from Kansas, who should really click his heels and go back home, he's here complaining about Senate Bill 3, which is the voting bill to try to make it fair for voter fraud, and about the election commission. Well, he's from a dark money organization in D.C. He's not from New Hampshire, and a majority of people in New Hampshire want elections to be honest. 70% of people in this country there's honesty in our elections. 70%, that's disgusting. These guys are out here, they're spending money. Where are we? They're telling you to call, email the governor's office, email the secretary. We have to do the same thing. A lot of you here have email lists. Send it out on your email list. Tell Governor Sununu you support him. Tell Secretary Bill Gardner you support him. We have to be doing the same thing because we don't have all this money. We don't have these people coming here and spending money and saying, you make sure you do the right thing in New Hampshire. You pay your activists, make sure New Hampshire states live free or die. We don't have that right. We have very few organizations here doing that kind of thing. So it needs to be year-round. You have to support the candidates you put into office because the left is going to do everything they can to get them out of office or up them. And I think that's going to be my little pump and go for the day. But we really need to do this, guys, because otherwise...
Because otherwise?
Because otherwise we'll end up friggin' Maggie Hassan again, who only won by default.
That's why we love her on the radio. And she brings up a really good point. Remember last year, James O'Keefe here? Yeah. Remember that? Right. And was it last year? Yeah. The year before. Yeah. And what did he have those copies of the Union Leader, and didn't he say bring him to Bill Gardner? Yeah. I know. How many of you in this room did that? All right. So we have a few hands that went up and did it. And so just to remind everybody what Kimberly's saying, and I can say this as someone who's run campaigns, and I can say this as someone who elected office. We really appreciate the work you do to help us get it. We would really appreciate it if you'd stay engaged and not let us get beaten to a pulp every single day. I mean, this is coming from a guy who's actually been protested by Black Lives Matter because of positions I took on the school board. No kidding. Anyway, speaking of school, our next speaker is someone who has done unbelievable work on behalf of the of New Hampshire to make sure that low and moderate income kids have the opportunities that wealthier ones have through a scholarship program that the state pays business property and business enterprise tax credits to the companies that fund these scholarship programs. Her name is Kate Baker. I'm sure she's no stranger to all of you here. And by the force of her will, Kate has brought this effort. She kept it alive after starvation attempts in the legislature. Raised money. It was uncertain whether or not the program was going to survive, and now that the legislature is firmly in the hands of a Republican Party, with a governor who agrees that choice in education, which creates competition in education, with competition everywhere, improves results and costs.
You're stealing my whole thing, you know.
There you go. So much for the intro. And, but now that it's there, Kate's doing some really spectacular work. And without further ado, Kate Baker.
My name is Kate Baker. I'm the Executive Director of Children's Scholarship Fund in New Hampshire. And I work on what is called private school. So we do have two different types of school choice in New Hampshire. We do have some public choice, which is our career and tech ed centers. We have VAX, an online charter school. And we do have about, I think now it's 4 charter schools in New Hampshire. I consider that public school choice. And I'm here today to talk to you about private school choice. And I'm going to just make it interactive. So if you have a question as I'm talking, just raise your hand and have a conversation. This is a small enough group that we can go back and forth, and I won't have any difficulty at all. So questions, raise your hand, I'll call on you, we'll just go like that. Ready?
Yeah,
go for it.
The Lutheran win.
Yeah, sure, the Lutheran. You want me to, yeah, I'll hit that, for sure. Yeah, definitely. When I do education savings accounts, I'll talk about that Trinity Lutheran Supreme Court case, and it helps us to be able to create those programs in New Hampshire. Representative Edwards.
So I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One is, how did you get to be so awesome?
You're funny.
And the second one is...
being tenacious.
What's
right?
next?
I'm the engine that could. That's how I'm so awesome. So, you know what it is? It's that I don't ever give up, okay? And I know that's like one of those little memes you see on the internet all the time. It says, never give up your dreams. But honestly, facilitating positive change takes much longer than you think, right? And you might wish that something happens immediately or think that it's going to happen or grow really fast, but instead it takes 5 years or 10 years. So the way I look at education choice in New Hampshire, I'm not going to call it school choice anymore because now we're talking about giving families the opportunity to do more than just choose a school, and I'll explain that more in a minute. But I think, too, to look at things as a long-range plan. Like, I'm in this for the long game. To me, this is like a 100-year plan, right? So when I look at making sure that children have education opportunities in New Hampshire and facilitating positive change to get them there, for me, it's a forever, right? I probably will never stop doing the work. So I probably what you're seeing when you're seeing that, you know, it continually grows year after year after year after year.
Brings me to the second question. So what's your #1 legislative priority next session?
Yeah, I'm going to go over 3 things. So I want to share with the people in the room that are new to this issue what we have in New Hampshire in addition to charter schools. So we have a education tax credit scholarship program. And the way that works is a business can donate to our scholarship organization. They can submit that donation from tax they have to pay to the state, enterprise and business projects, and they utilize those money to provide scholarships for children so they can private school or homeschool. Let's talk about the fiscal implications of that since we're at the taxpayers event, right? So, the people in this room know the average cost of per pupil in New Hampshire public school? Too much. It's about $16,000. Okay, $16,000 per pupil in New Hampshire for a child to be in a public school. We're speaking to Senator John Riddon. Not that I think about this beforehand, but his reason for working school choice is he feels like by implementing these programs, it's our best opportunity to give our low property tax property relief. Okay, the reason for that is the average cost of a private school in New Hampshire. You know, what do you think? 8? It's a little lower than. Can you imagine? What do you think?
I think it's 7.
You think it's 7? So real close. Yeah, it's $6,500. $1,500. So if we take $16,000 per pupil for public school, and we set our average cost for a private school, I've got $1,500 in my hand now. Where that savings is, you know, savings to the state, some local savings. I'm sure they're going to tell you there's fixed costs, variable costs. Warren Buffett actually says there are no fixed costs. There's just long-range costs you have to work on making right? So there's a different debate whether there's variable costs. But the fact remains, the average cost of a student in a traditional public school is $15,000. If a child utilizes a school program or pays for that education themselves, their parents out of their pocket, or some variation thereof, or proportion thereof, they might be $6,000. They're utilizing a private school, and they're utilizing a tax credit. There's even more savings because the tax credit for business is 85%, not 100%. So these types of programs, in essence, can put money in our pockets, put money in taxpayers' pockets. For every child that we help in a school program, there's more money in our pockets. Not my pockets, not the kids' pockets, but the taxpayers' pockets. Why this is a key issue, I say we should advocate for taxpayer groups. So usually I don't focus on fiscal implications at all. I focus on the kids, right? Because it's 2010. It's New Hampshire. We have incredible education opportunities here. We have the best schools in the nation, and in my opinion, someone shouldn't be limited in their income of whether or not to choose those schools. And it's as simple as that, right? The doors should be open, the kids should have access to them. That's just the way I think. I don't think your income should limit your opportunities. So, you know, it's kind of a, now since I've been doing this for years, I've seen so many children be kind of launched into the stratosphere by having education that's the right thing too. For example, we had a child right here in Manchester, public middle school, IEP, which is called individual education, which is a special needs child. And he was in suspension time. Like a bad kid, they were saying he was a bad kid, he was getting D's and he was being put in suspension, and he had special needs. So you'd think he would actually get what he needs, but no, come to find out, his mother already incarcerated for drugs, okay? So his mother was like, if I don't do something, my son is going to be just like his brother and get for drugs. She finds us, she gets a scholarship from us, she sends him to this Catholic school on Union Street called St. Casimir. I don't know if you've ever been to St. Casimir, but when you're there, it feels like a warm, happy envelope is wrapped around you, and they just love children. He starts going to St. Casimir. His mother goes to have an IEP meeting, which if you're a special family of a special child, you know you do that. You go and have a meeting. She says, I'm here to have a meeting with you. They say to her, oh, well, we don't feel like we need to have a meeting with you. He's getting A's and B's. He goes on to graduate from St. Casimir School with honors. Now he attends the Academy for Science and Design charter school in Nashua, and he wants to go to Princeton for engineering. Okay? Hello? Like, that made perfect sense. Wait till I tell you. You know how much the scholarship was? It was $1,000. So just $1,000. So that kid was costing $16,000 in his local public school. He leaves the public school. We give him a scholarship for $1,000, and now he's on a totally different life trajectory. So that's how the Education Tax Credit Scholarship Program works. A business makes a donation to us, takes the tax credit, we use the money to do that, which is transformational. So last year, We raised $220,000 and helped 122 kids, which was great, okay? That was great, sure, fun. So, Kevin, wait till I tell you what it is this year, okay, you ready? Okay. So, we're still collecting checks because people could make their donations until the 15th of July from taking the tax credit, but this year, it looks like we got to $650,000. So we're tripling the size of the program now. So, you know, those years where we were fighting the court battle about the constitutionality, yes, truly did slow us down. But now we're in our third year of operating after that, in essence, unencumbered. We do have to always fight a repeal battle. We go to the State House and make sure they don't repeal the tax credit law every year, which is actually a great opportunity for me to talk to legislators about school choice. So it doesn't bother me, but now we're finally in the, you know, when you do a startup, you got that part of the hockey stick. Now we're finally on the upswing. So that's what the tax credit program looks like. So Representative Edwards asked me, what are we working on? What's next? So right now we have a bill in the legislature. It's actually been retained in House Education, so we can work on it a little more. And what that bill is something called education savings accounts. So when you get a scholarship from us at the scholarship organization, it's not just for private school tuition. You can also get a scholarship from us to purchase online ed, right? So for example, I have one scholarship student who attends a Stanford online high school with a scholarship from us. You also could pay tuition. Say this little Stanford ed guy, who's adorable by the way, you know, finishes his Stanford ed quickly and he wanted to take a college class. He could use our scholarship as long as he hasn't graduated from high school to do that. You also could purchase homeschooling materials or books or technology. So the scholarships are not just for a school tuition, it's for, in essence, now customizing the education of your child. So the education savings accounts would do just that. They would make it so that parents could get a grant that they then could customize their education for their child. The way it works in other states is like a restricted debit card, right? Like you might imagine your EBT card that you can only use for food. This would be a restricted card you could only use for education expenses. So the reason the Trinity Lutheran case is important is that when we're discussing this stuff, like what a parent can choose to do for their child, the topic of religious schools always comes up, right? And whether or not a parent can use our scholarship money or the education savings account money to choose a religious school. And what the Trinity Lutheran case basically said is yes, right? That otherwise, if you were to limit that, it would be discrimination. And of course, I've been saying that for 5 years, but I'm just Kate Baker. I'm not a new, U.S. Supreme Court justice. So now I'm so glad they agree with me. How about that? Yeah. Right? So the point of creating an education choice program would be to empower those families, right, to now be in the driver's seat of their child's education and not necessarily just have their only choice be their assigned district school, right, to get them so they can do what they need to do for the child. And if we limited that only to certain things, then it doesn't make sense, right? So what I like about the education savings account is, for example, a family could purchase a course at their local high school. I mean, what a revolutionary idea, right? I want to take calculus at Central, but I want to do my literature work at the community tech school, and I want to do my science at home because my mom loves blowing things up with me, right? So, I mean, you could do all those things. You could purchase a course. You could pay tuition at a school. You can do a myriad of things like that. Tutors, for example, you have a special needs child, you could use your education savings account to pay for their speech and language therapist, right? So it's really, really cool. It's a new idea in the legislature. It's a new idea to all of you, too, right? I mean, that took me, even 10 minutes to explain, okay? So it will take a little while, I think, for everyone to understand the vision. The cost savings is simple. The idea is slightly complex, right? All of us probably attended school in a building or we were homeschooled. And so the idea of doing a bunch of different things is a new idea. So it might take me a little while to share that information with everyone to the point where they totally get it, right? So the good thing is that we had that bill in the legislature already, And it got so far, actually, that we shocked the nation, okay? The National School Choice people finally noticed us, which they never have done. And they said, wow, what are you guys doing there? Like, you're really starting to make a difference. And we said, yes. So if you don't mind, would you please help us? And they said yes, and they did actually help us to hire a lobbyist who can work in Concord on that education savings account bill that's not me. Isn't that exciting? Because I want to double the scholarship program. So now we're at 650, right? 650,000 bucks. Yeah, baby. And I want to double that next year, right? Yeah, it is 1.3, right? So now I'm a dead serious fundraiser, okay? So watch out, everybody. Put your wallets, hold your wallets, hold your wallets, okay? Right? So that's what I want to do. I don't want to go to legislature. Not that I don't love hanging around with you, John Burt. Not that I don't love it up there. But I'd like to stay out here in the field, we'll call it, right? And ask some other people to help me with that. Although I'm still available, of course, to answer questions, for sure. So that was really all I wanted to cover. I'm happy to answer other questions. I wanted to share with you that if you want to watch all of this stuff happening in real time, you can go to Facebook, and you can like a Facebook page called schoolchoicenh.org, which is where you'll see all of these types of alerts, like call your legislator, the education savings account bill is in the House, and you'll be able to kind of follow what we're up to all the time. And if you want to learn more about the scholarships or refer a family to us, which I love, or refer a business, I mean, why would you want to pay your tax when you give it to me instead? It's way more fun, let me tell you, and then you know you're helping kids. So if you pay tax, business enterprise or business profits tax, CSF, and then New Hampshire written out.org is my website. And I'm really easy to find. If you typed in Kate Baker NH in the internet, there'd be like a list like this that would come up, and my phone number would probably be in red and flashing. So I'd love to hear from you if you pay business enterprise or business profits tax and you don't want to. I mean, who wants to pay? Frank, sorry, we don't want to pay you up there. We're good, right? We're good. We're going to give it to kids instead. Yeah, you don't need it. Okay, good. Excellent. So that was it. I wanted to share my website, that you can chase us at schoolchoicenh.org. And does anyone else have any other questions for me? Thank you so much for... Oh, we do have a question. Yeah, go ahead, shoot.
I really hadn't heard of charter schools in New Hampshire. I'm from Cheshire County. Do they have any?
Where's Cheshire County? Tell me. There you go. Is it Keene? So Keene, you have MC2, Making Community Connections Charter School, which is in downtown Keene, which is a 6 through 12 school, a little more for at-risk kids. Then you also have one in Surrey. So the Surrey Village Charter School story is really interesting. So that's one of the, people sometimes say school choice doesn't help rural areas, and I have to contradict them with this story. So they were closing the elementary school in Surrey because of the declining student population that's been happening in New Hampshire. They said, we're going to close this little Surrey elementary school, and you parents are going to have to put your kids on a bus for 45 minutes to drive them to the other town. The parents were like, heck no, we're not doing that. And they started their own charter school in their own little town for their own little kids. I mean, why not, right? Why not? So now there's a charter school in Surrey, and it's a cute little tiny thing, but has about 120 kids maybe, and they come from all over that geographic area, and it happened because they closed their elementary school there. Again, that's another cost savings, right? So $16,000 per pupil in your traditional public school. The charter schools get a little under $7,000, right? So all that money's in our pocket somewhere. So I kind of like that. Great question. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Am I good? Yes, John Burt. Representative, Honorable John Burt.
Charter schools, unlike the public schools, do they teach like that dusty old piece of paper, the Constitution?
Well, that's a good question, John. So every charter school is different. And so as a parent, I can tell you that if I was going to send my child to a charter school, 1, I would visit it. 2, I would ask them the questions about what they teach, because different charter schools do different things. Some of them, for example, in Nashua, right, at the Academy for Science and Design, they're focused on physics and math and STEM and engineering, right? You like that, Emily, huh? Right? So they do have niche markets, and so you would need to go and ask them. I have been known to do something as a parent which is join my child's board of the school that they attend, which people love that, having me on their board. Anyway, so I've actually found that most of our charter schools in New Hampshire, I mean, they're grassrootsy. We don't have any charter management organizations like they do in other states, I think particularly because our funding is low. So we don't see those corporate kind of conglomerates start schools here. Rather, they're really groups of parents and teachers that want to start the school. And so if you want to join the board, you just go and say, hey, I'm here, I'd like to volunteer. And they say, okay. And then if you wanted to have some kind of influence over the school your child attended, then you just would, right? It seems like when education is closer to the parents and the kids, that you see an improvement. And that's been my experience. I did have one at a charter school and did volunteer and be on the board. And I actually teach my kids the Constitution myself anyway, right? Yes, sir.
You should make everyone aware that
Yes.
a charter school is by definition a
Yeah.
public school.
Yes, it is a public school. That's right.
And
it's so nice to see you.
And it's entitled to half the student average cost.
Well, it's not quite half. They allocate it in the budget. Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm saying, they're
Yeah.
entitled to public money.
Yeah.
They don't have to pay for special education because of the districts.
Districts cover that. Yeah. They coordinate with them.
Therefore,
Yeah.
parents and teachers can get together and get one going.
You can. You can totally start one. Took me about 3 years
I know.
to work on a charter school. I mean, I don't know if I would do it again. Right?
But that's a big
You'd have to really put my arm on my back and be like, start this charter school, and I'd be like, ah! But, I mean, it's a ton of work, but it's totally doable. Right now there's new projects starting in Manchester, and there's a new project starting in Concord, and I think there's also a new North Country project also. So there's 3 right now. I'm sorry, Wyndham, Manchester, and Concord. There's 3 projects that people are working on right now, and they're pretty good. There isn't. I was mistaken. The North Country Charter School is already there, and someone was telling me about another one that existed up there that I didn't know about. Robert Frost is up there, another one, but that's a K through 8, I think. There is a website actually that has a list. So if you did want to see where all the charter schools were in New Hampshire, there's a group called the New Hampshire Charter School Association, New Hampshire Alliance, for Public Charter Schools. And they actually have a little map. You can even say, I live at 03104, what's around me? And it will show you all the charter schools in your area. And there's new ones opening all the time. It's really kind of fun. I mean, it's a really neat movement in New Hampshire because it's so grassrootsy. I mean, that's normal for here, I think. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So if you diversify your child's high school education, who actually issues the diploma?
So if you're a homeschooler, you do issue the diploma yourself.
They take
Yeah.
one class online
Yeah.
and one class over
Yeah,
here.
you would probably do a portfolio and put your portfolio together, and then you would do the diploma yourself. Okay, yeah. And that's happening currently. Yeah, when a homeschooler is meeting the requirements that they have their diploma. I mean, you can also ask your district to look at what you've done and give you a diploma. I mean, I think it depends on what the family really wants to
I'm
do.
not necessarily saying homeschooling, but
Yeah.
you did take a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I think it would technically be homeschooling then, okay? If you were utilizing 10 different providers for your service to educate your child, you probably would be a homeschooler in New Hampshire, yeah. I mean, you could, I guess, be dual enrolled. That happens already. That children go to 2 schools or be homeschooled and attend public school at the same time. It'd be homeschooled and attend private school at the same time. You could do that. So big part of what we do actually at our organization, we have a 1-800 number that my coworker, Kathy, answers, and she's a certified counselor with the Parent Information Center, particularly for special needs kids, but she actually spends most of her day counseling families.
Yes,
Yeah.
diplomas are not
Yeah, and so we just spend time making sure that people have the resources that they need to be able to do this, right? Because there's a lot of questions like that, like, I want to I want to get a tutor. Where are good tutors, right? And I can tell you there's 5 different tutoring centers in this area, and parents like this one the best, and then they like that one next best, right? And so we share that kind of, I'll call it institutional knowledge at this point after doing it for 5 years. We're really happy to help families to find what works for their child.
thinking about the diploma.
The logistics, yeah. I'm good. Yeah. Anyone else? One more, okay, Rich?
One more.
One half. You get half a question, ma'am.
Well, I hear all this about getting pieces of your education in different places.
Yeah.
But to me, it sounds like a logistical nightmare for parents. How do you get your kids to all these places?
Sure. I mean, first I'll tell you that it would be voluntary for someone to do that. They could absolutely still choose a school, right? So you'd have to be a person that wanted to do that first. And then if you wanted to do that, then you would be empowered to do so, right? So homeschoolers are doing that currently.
But for the majority of people, they don't have the option of being there to transfer the child all over.
Sure, so they might use the education savings account to purchase school tuition, right? To pay school tuition.
But they're still limited to what's...
So this is the way I look at it. So I never want to limit everyone's choices because one person might find it challenging. Instead, I would rather help that one person overcome their challenge and open up the opportunities to everyone, right? So I did have a family who, you like that? I did have a family who was paying tuition for their private school and had to drive there to get them there, and the car broke down, right? And so we did have to help the family by paying their portion for a couple of months, and I just raised more money, and that's what I'm good at, so no big deal, right? Paid their portion, they used the money to fix the car. I mean, I would rather help people in those individual circumstances than create something that limits choices or opportunity. Rather, let's just throw all the doors open and then let people choose what works for them. So I gotta go now. Rich is gonna pull the hook. He's gonna get a hook on me any second.
Kate Baker. All right, great questions, everybody. And now, with the theme of education, we're happy to note that Commissioner Frank Edelblue is in the house. And apparently I don't need to say much more than that, so without further ado, Commissioner Edelblue, thanks for being with us.
Got my handy dandy constitution here. Might need that.
You need it around here.
How's everyone doing? Is this after this? We're done? No. So, oh, okay. Just didn't know if I was like a cleanup crew here. So happy to be here. Excited to be here. I've heard you guys have had some great speakers this afternoon. So I appreciate that I get to follow all of those. I also bring greetings from the governor. So Chris, can we have a clap? Chris is up there working hard, and so he sends his greetings. Of course, I'm going to talk about education in my new role as Education Commissioner. First of all, I have to tell you guys something. I should not be allowed to have this much fun every single day, okay? I mean, I am having a good time. I am really enjoying the work up there. A lot of opportunities, a lot of great things going on. What I want to do is I'm guessing, how many educators do we have in the audience today? We got a few over here. I want to talk a little bit about a shift that is happening in education so that it helps everyone really to appreciate, kind of what's going on there as we try and, turn the ship. Ships don't turn on a dime. You can't just turn the engine off, put it in reverse, and get this thing to spin around. It takes time for things to change. And so I thought that if I use this illustration, it might help you understand kind of what's happening and how you're trying to affect some of that change. And this is the shift from what I refer to as kind of the industrial model of education to the information age. Now, I know many of you are thinking to yourselves, well, the information age has been going on for some time. Are we still shifting? Yes, we continue to shift. These shifts don't happen easily. But in the industrial age model of education, the educators were the possessors of content. So these guys, they have all the information, and they communicate that information, they transmit that information to a group of students. Let's say it's a class of 30. And in that class of 30, 10 of the students get it, 10 of the students get about half of it, 10 don't get too much of it, but the bell rings and everybody moves along. And we continue to repeat this cycle over and over again until the clock runs out, kids are 18 or whatever it is, and they move on. That has changed dramatically in the information age, or needs to change dramatically in the information age. And there was, at this point in time, I've been out visiting many of the schools. I'm about 3 months into this job. And I've probably been in about 50 schools. And I had an experience in one of the schools that I thought was just very poignant in terms of illustrating the shift that is taking place. And I was in a middle school, and I was touring around the school, and typically when I show up at the schools, I spend time with the students. I actually go into classrooms, I talk to students, I talk to teachers. I typically also get an opportunity to meet with school boards, with parent groups, with the teachers and the administration themselves. So it's a good opportunity. But this particular day, I was in a middle school, and I'm with the principal, and we walk into a class, and it is a social studies class going on at that time. And in the social studies class, they were studying a period of history, I think it was around World War II, and the principal, thinking that he was kind of wax eloquent in front of these students, blurts out to the class, says, "Does anybody know something about so-and-so?" And it was this relatively obscure historical person. And I think, again, he imagined that nobody's going to know anything about this person, and so what's going to happen is he's going to be able to tell them all the information he knows about him. But much to his surprise, one little young lady all of a sudden shoots her hand up in the air, and she says, "Oh, I know about that guy." And she begins to list off all this information about this relatively obscure historical person. Honestly, I didn't know who the guy was. And so, that's how obscure, because I like history. But anyway, so, and this young lady, she puts all this information out, and the principal is thinking like, wait a minute, how do you know all this information? A little bit disappointed, I think. And the young lady says, "I saw a special on Netflix." And I thought to myself, this is a really good example of the shift that is taking place. Because imagine, if you're this poor teacher in this classroom, you have to be more engaging than Netflix. Good luck with that, right? To this generation. If you are this educator, you have to be more content-rich than Netflix. Good luck with that also, right? I mean, they have a whole team of people researching the show before they sit there on the air. And so, it really just illustrates the change that is taking place in education and the role of educators and how educators are supposed to be helping our students continue to grow and to form. And really, the way I see it is that role of educator has shifted from being the possessor of content and delivering that content to one who is going to help the students learn how to get information. Because, on these devices, I got a device in here. On these devices, those students have more information than many, probably most of us had in the entire library in our schools, right? So teach the kids, how do you curate information so you know what is real news, what is fake news? How do you distinguish between those? How to take this vast amount of information and make it formative so you can actually do something with it, right? So you have a bunch of information, it's another to make it useful so you can do something with it. And so this is a shift that we see taking place in education, and I think is a good shift and creates a lot of opportunity for us to continue to move forward. One of those ways that we need to move forward, I believe, is what I refer to as personalization of education. And let me tell you why we need to personalize. And I'll tell you what I think it means, and I'll tell you why I think we need to personalize. Today there is an unfortunate statistic that, and I'm not making this up, it was Ross Cattell, who's the president of the New Hampshire Community College System, testified before the Senate about a month or so ago about this. But 2/3 of the students that are showing up at our community college system need remediation in math and English, right? So why do we have to personalize? Because we're investing all this time and energy, and clearly we're not getting, our money's worth, so to speak, for that, right? It's just not getting through. The message is not. So we need, in personalization, we're basically saying, can we actually make it so that every single kid learns? Every single kid gets to the top of their game. And the first kind of aspect of personalization is, and we have to recognize, I believe, is that every one of our students is unique. Now, that seems like an obvious thing, right? I mean, look at a crowd, look around this room. Everybody take a moment, look around. See anybody who's homogeneous in here? No, we're all different. We all look differently. We all respond differently. We communicate differently. We think differently. And yet, in our education system, we've somehow convinced ourselves that all the students have to be the same. Like, okay, in 2nd grade, everybody's like this. In 3rd grade, everybody's learning this. In 4th grade, everybody's learning this. It's just not reality, guys. That's just not humanity. And so we need an education system that is able to meet students where they are and help to move them along. And one of the stories that I like to share about this is my own experience in educating my children, and one of my sons in particular. So this particular son had some difficulty reading. He had slight dyslexia, and he had a particular type of dyslexia. And so we had to work with 3 different types of reading specialists before we finally found the one that unlocked reading for him. So, again, slow to read. In the traditional system, he would not have met any of those benchmarks of the homogeneity, right? Would have been tracked as a kid who probably not too bright, you should do something different. But I got to tell you something, by the time he was 12, he was reading fine. He got through all the Harry Potter books and really loved it. That student, my son, graduated from college in May and is now working at Google. So, yeah, exactly. I mean, literally on their dream team, right? So this is not a kid who was dumb. He was just a kid who we needed to figure out how to unlock, the access to that information for him. And what I believe is that for every single student, now, many students can access education the way that we have it right now, but some can't. And a number of them can't in some areas, obviously, if 2/3 of the kids need remediation. And so what we need is an education system that recognizes that individuality and allows kids to progress at their own pace, allows them to get to where they're going at their own speed. I was at a high school up in Grafton County, and I was meeting with the student council that day. And one of the vice president of the student council made a comment. And he goes, and it's a high school that has a CTE center associated with it, and that's a career and technical education center associated with it, which is where we're teaching kids some really valuable skills and employable skills. But the student made the statement, he goes, those kids in CTE, they don't do very good in school. Now, I thought to myself, who's this kid's English teacher to begin with, right? I mean, so they don't do very well in school. I just had to correct it, right? But then I said, time out. You can't actually say that, right? Is it that the CTE students don't do well at school, or that school doesn't do very well with CTE students? And what is the role of school? Are we just supposed to say, we offer this generic product and we just throw the kids into the system, some get it, some don't, and we'll just keep spending more money and hope that more get it than not? I mean, it's just a ridiculous premise. We got to look at what we're getting for the funding that we're investing. And so this is what I mean by kind of that part of that personalization and that and understanding, that there's a uniqueness to children, and we can do this. Another aspect of personalization that I think we need to consider and look at, and you'll see we are making some changes in the state, is we spend a lot of time focused on proficiency. And I love proficiency. Proficiency is great, but I also love growth. And let me tell you a story about proficiency. So I was in a high school here in Manchester, and this was one of your high school, or no, it wasn't a high school, it was an elementary school. And this is one of the elementary schools that has a very high immigrant population. And so there was a student whose family wasn't...
It's right over here, Beach Street School.
I wasn't at Beach Street, I was at Parker Varney at this one. But Beach Street also has a high immigrant population, yep. So I was at Parker Varney, and there's a student there who is an immigrant. His family's an immigrant they were from Pakistan. And for some reason, the family had some event, I don't know if it was a wedding or a funeral or something, in Pakistan. So again, when that happens, culturally, the whole family packed up and they were gone for 30 days. And the student had just arrived back the day that I was visiting the school. And the next day, they were going to be taking their Smarter Balance testing. Right? And I just thought to myself, we're going to hold the teacher accountable for this student's performance on Smarter Balance when he hasn't even been here for the last 30 days? I mean, what a silly concept. I mean, I may not be an education expert, that's what they tell me anyways, but I have to tell you something, that's just a ridiculous premise. Like, you just have to have common sense, and you can look at that and say, like, this doesn't make any sense at all. And so I think that we need to focus on kind of growth. And what I will tell you is, there are some zip codes in the state, and we've got students who are performing really, really well. And we get them here because they've got all kinds of supports at home and structure and everything else. and we grow them to here, and we pat ourselves on the back and say like, oh, those kids are really performing, they're high performing. And we've got other districts, and kids are coming in because they're disadvantaged in life, whatever, and they're coming in here, and maybe we grow them to here. So who's doing the better job? The one who gets them here and grows them to here, or the one who gets them here and grows them to here, right? So growth has got to be an important component, because what I'll tell you is, let's look at that top end for a moment. You know, we sit here, and the measurement systems that we have in the state tell us we got them here and we grew them to here, and because it's a high proficiency, aren't we doing a great job? Like, then we pat ourselves on the back and everybody's all happy. But the problem is, you know, that's all a relative measurement, right? We grew them to here, but maybe that kid ought to be here, right? I got to ask you the question, where are the John Adams of our day? Where are the Thomas Jeffersons of our day? You know, where are the students who, when they're 14 years old, know Latin and know Greek and know French and are translating the classics from original language into English and from English into the original language? Those kids are among us today. You know, those are the kids, if we got them here, maybe we ought to be growing them to 140%, not to 79% and patting ourselves on the back. And then, when you look at growth, is when we've got a student who comes to us here, you know, what are we doing to grow them as fast and as furiously as we can? Because maybe they come to us with some disadvantage. Maybe they come to us and they didn't, you know, come from a family environment that was reading to them and talking to them and doing all kinds of things that help them move along. That student, we need to find ways to grow them as quickly as we can, because maybe that's the next Thomas Jefferson. And what I will tell you is, in many cases, that is a student that is stuck in generational poverty. Right? Because the ticket for that student to get out of a cycle of poverty is to get educated so that they can get a good job. But you have to understand, I call it generational because their parents, you know, for them, they went through that industrial model, and they might have been in that third group who didn't get too much, but the bell sounded and everybody moved along. The last time they were in the principal's office was not because they were in there advocating for their student. It was because they were in there when they were in school and they were getting into trouble. You know, like the idea of going to the principal's office is not a good idea for them. They don't do that well. And so, again, in this personalization, we can talk about the uniqueness of students. We can talk about, you know, this emphasizing growth and trying to get growth out of the system. Another aspect of personalization, and I think an aspect that is going to be critical for it to work, is something that I refer to as parent voice in the system. Now, I ask, when I'm out traveling around and I'm talking and I'm in the schools, I ask educators and administrators about parent voice. I said, tell me what you do to get parent voice in your system. And inevitably, they begin to talk to me about parent engagement. And they'll talk to me about a movie night, or they'll talk to me about a science fair or a crafts fair, and how we get the parents to come in, or a pizza night. And I'm like, that's parent engagement, but that's not the same as parent voice. And this is a subtle difference, but an important difference, I believe, in order to help our education system continue to improve. And parent voice is giving parents and guardians substantive decision-making capacity in the education of their students. And so basically what I'm asking for is, I want parents to have skin in the game. I want them to feel a sense of responsibility for the success of the decisions that they are making. You know, all of us, when we make a decision, when we make a choice, say, well, I'm going to do this, well, you have a vested interest in making sure that you're making a good decision, so you want to see it succeed. And so I think that same thing will apply in our education system when we create a system that requires, and I know I'm nervous about that term as well, but requires parents, sorry, you got to make choices, right? You can choose A, B, C, or D, but pick one, because you're the guardian, you're responsible for that student, so I need you to pick something for me. You can't just delegate that to the school system. And by doing that, you're going to get buy-in. And we have examples of this in the state. But one of the ones, Kay was just up here. Is Kay still here, or did she take off? She took off, okay. So, I mean, Kay was talking about charter schools. I mean, charter schools are this idea of parent voice, taken to the nth degree. I mean, and how many people have been in a charter school in the state? Okay, we've got a few. Well, I can just tell you, when you go into a charter school, there are parents everywhere. I mean, you can't get away from them. Because those parents made a deliberate choice to say, I want my child to go to this school. And so now they've got skin in the game. They're going to make sure, A, that their child succeeds, and B, that the school succeeds as a result of that. And they will go to extreme lengths. I was, about a month ago, I was at a Saturday morning meeting with school business administrators, and I had to leave to go to another meeting, and I walk out of the school, and there's a big U-Haul box truck parked outside. And as I walk past it, a woman yells out from the driver's seat, "Hey, Frank, what are you doing?" I'm like, I was coming from a meeting. What are you doing sitting in a box truck on a Saturday in front of a public school? And she goes, "Oh, well, they're changing over some of their furniture, and we need furniture in our charter school, so I rented this big box truck, and we're going to fill it up and take it over to the charter school." I mean, like, this is, you don't see it happening in the public schools a lot, right? That you had mom renting a box truck and filling it with furniture on the weekend to bring to the school. So again, because they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that that school is successful. I have to mention this, it's not exactly associated with this point, but we've got a charter school in this city, in one of our more challenged economic areas in the state. And, because I'm sharing this example because oftentimes what people tell me is, people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, they don't make choices. You can't get them into the choice game. They're disengaged, they're not interested, they feel uneducated, they don't want to get involved. But again, so we've got a charter school in this city, in one of the most economically challenged areas. And again, these are all public charter schools, as Kate pointed out. We've got 4 open seats, right? Because they're already at capacity. They only had 4 openings this year. 259 parents in one of the most economically challenged areas in our state were lining up saying, "Can you please let my kid get into that school?" Because those parents, they may come from an economically challenged, background, but they know that a good education is going to be the ticket out of generational poverty for their student, and they're willing to invest in it. So what we need to do is we need to create opportunities for parent voice, not just in the charter system, and not just in, when we talk about choice, oftentimes we talk about it as school A versus school B, or school B versus school C, but you can push that down. If you've got a public school, you've got, 4 second-grade classes, well, why not allow the parents to choose one of those 4 classes, right? There you go. There's some parent voice right there. They get to make that selection. And inevitably, when I bring this example up with education administrators, they're nervous about that. And understandably, they're nervous because it's something new, and we're all nervous about new things. But they're like, well, what if everybody chooses one of school or class A instead of the other ones? I said, well, first of all, if they do, we can create some type of a lottery system, and we'll get the kids equally distributed if we need to. But if they're all choosing one over the other ones, then you should ask yourself the question, why does every single parent want in that class? Right? So there's a lot we can learn. So the next thing that actually kind of my last point that I wanted to talk about is just kind of a vision for education in New Hampshire. Because one of the things I'm working on at the department is really trying to understand, kind of what is our vision for education here in New Hampshire, and then because that really should drive what is the vision for the department. Like, what is the role of the department in education in New Hampshire? Because honestly, I'm not responsible for all of education. We all are responsible for education, right? Because we're all citizens. And so I come back to Article 83 in our little pocket New Hampshire Constitution here, which talks about knowledge and learning generally diffused through a community being essential to the preservation of a free government. And then it continues on. But I just wanted to stop there. Education is a prophylactic to the preservation of our republic. Because well-educated students, they can distinguish real news from fake news. Well-educated students are not easily preyed upon, right? Everybody's concerned, the big corporation is going to prey on somebody or some other that's going to prey on. If you're well-educated, you don't have to worry about that. You can handle that. Well-educated students know how to apply logic and reasoning in the electoral process and make good decisions. So, you know, we need to continue to recognize the benefit and the importance of education to our constitutional republic. And I thank all of you for helping to support me to work on that project in New Hampshire, because I almost can't think of a more, it may be the most important thing, but maybe you will have something else, but I almost can't think of a more important place to invest my time and my life. So thank you for letting me be here.
Well, I wish I had something a little more clever to say than that. All right, I'm going to ask Steve Negron, did I say that correctly, to come up and discuss veterans issues with us for a few moments. I will only say that as a member of the Manchester School Board, I am very happy that Commissioner Edelblue is starting to shake the tree, so to speak. This, you know, he talks about parent voice. Institutionally, this is a problem. We had a curriculum development guide that was making its way through the committee process. You know what the role of parents was, according to the Manchester School District in its curriculum development guide? It was to tell the school information about their kids, and it was to show up at open houses and other school functions. This was the role of the parent as enunciated in the curriculum review guide. God forbid we ask parents to actually be part of the curriculum review. Without further ado, I'm happy to bring Steve Negron up to talk about veterans issues, concerned veterans of New Hampshire. Yes, concerned veterans of New Hampshire. Here we go, Steve.
Thank you very much. I just want to take a few moments of your time, and I have, can I have your attention, please? I have one question. All those veterans in the room, could you please raise your hands? All those who support veterans, please raise your hand. We have days like this, picnics all across this country, and we enjoy them every day because there are men and women today that aren't with their families. There's Marines and Army men right now in Afghanistan and other places we can't talk about that aren't enjoying this kind of lifestyle. There's seamen that are put out to sea on submarines and battle carrier groups that they're not with their families. And we have airmen that are 60 to 90 feet underground monitoring ICBMs today so that we can keep this country at peace. But there are some of them who have not been able to come back home. And I would like just a moment of silence for every airman, soldier, Marine, Coast Guard, and seaman who gave the ultimate sacrifice so that we can do the things that we do here. Thank you very much. A little bit about me. I'm a state representative from Nashville, Ward 5. I'm a freshman representative. I guess I can't be called a freshman. I guess it's second semester now. I guess I can be. But a little bit about my background. I'm retired military. My wife's retired military. My father was 33 years in the Air Force. My father-in-law was both in the Army and the Marine Corps. My nephew was in the Army, 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. And my son is currently going through tech school to be a crew chief on the CV-22 Osprey in the Air Force. I understand veterans' issues, and they're very important to me, and they're important to the people of the state of New Hampshire. For those of you who don't know, last month, the President signed the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Act. This piece of legislation is so long overdue, and there's been a lot of people that have been working on this for years and years, so that the taxpayer money that we provide to the government to help run an over 300,000 person organization was used in the right manner. It was used to help the veterans that are out there that need their care. There's been horror stories we've all heard about them. The one that comes to mind was about this Navy seaman in New Jersey. Multiple times he went to a VA center, didn't get seen. on a Saturday, much like today, he went in front of the VA Center, doused himself in gasoline, and set himself on fire. He's no longer with us. What this piece of legislation does for the Secretary of the VA is to give him, in this case, the ability to look within the organization and take those people that are not doing their job and firing them. I know my wife is a civil servant. I know a lot of people have served in civil service. I know there's unions. But there's a lot of things here that we have to bypass, we need to shortcut, and we need to take actions that's quick, decisive, and one-sided. And that's what we now have in the Veterans Administration. And it's important because today's military force is an all-volunteer force. Listen to me. All volunteer. Every person in this room and every person today that's serving raised their right hand and volunteered to go into the service. The draft ended in the early 70s. So every man and woman that's in the military today does so willingly and without objection. And they take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Sometimes we have to fight our own battles within the confines of our country. One of the things that surprised me is that when this legislation was going through, one of our existing congresswomen in committee voted against the bill. Surprised me because when the bill came to the floor, she voted for it. Accountability starts at the top, both in a department like the VA and in Congress. We've heard a lot of good speeches today, a lot of good talks about those kind of people that have to be accountable. I was raised by a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. I've been accountable my whole life. I know what it's like. And I'll leave you with this. Thank you, Ed, for having me here today. Rich, for letting me come up and speak a little bit. But tonight, let us go home knowing that as soon as this legislation starts to gain traction, that we're going to kick some people out of positions. They don't get their bonuses. They don't get their step promotions. They don't go from GS 13s to 14s just because they take up valuable oxygen. Their job is to take care of our veterans. And that's what it's for. And I'll leave you with this. As our congresswoman, who decided to vote no in committee, but yes on the floor, is one of the reasons why I'm considering running for CD2, to take that person out and know that if I go to Washington, my voice will be the same in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. Thank you very much.
And Steve, you should thank Jane because she put you on the list. All right, taking a look at that list. I haven't seen her. Is Carol McGuire in the house? I know I saw Dan.
I've seen Carol.
Yes. All right. But I think Dan is going to, I know Dan talked to me about coming up too, so I guess we're going to, do I have to play Vanna White? Dan McGuire, state representative still?
No.
No? Epsom? 6 years, but no longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I decided 6 years was enough. But my wife Carol is in her 9th year, I guess. So, this event, I'll talk about. I'm the political director of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, and I'll talk about them briefly. But I'll tell you, this event is very special to me personally because we moved to New Hampshire 12 years ago, summer of 2005, and we drove across country, and the very first thing we came as we drove into the state was to this event, and we met Jane and all that. I'd been talking to her by email. So this is my 13th CNHT Picnic, and therefore we've been here 12 years, and hopefully another 12, we'll see. So the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, though, is even 2 years older than that. So I think we're 14 years old now. And This is the premier small L libertarian organization in the state. We have over 600 members, and we are involved in political activities from elections through legislation, so all the way through the whole process. On elections, last cycle, we donated over $33,000 to candidates. So that's, and especially because those are going to House level, mostly House level and Senate level candidates. That has a lot of impact. I believe, Keith can tell me if it's right, 50 or plus, 70 plus of our endorsed candidates got, 71 of our endorsed candidates were elected. And so this organization is slowly helping to populate the State House with liberty-minded people. After elections, we are involved in rating all of the bills. So we have people in our organization, volunteers, read every single piece of proposed legislation, and we're talking about 800 plus bills a year, something like that. And we rate it for liberty content, and then we publish those ratings. We publish a guide to voting in the legislature called the Gold Standard, which selects the important bills for legislators to vote on. We then rate the legislators at our annual meeting on their how well they voted and give them a score and select the legislator of the year. Other things we do in the State House is on important bills, I and others go and testify in front of committees, try to push good legislation, and try to block bad stuff. We have some good effects, sometimes yes, sometimes no. This past year, you've heard from Kim and others on stuff that passed, constitutional carry. One thing that Carol did with Kate was there was some very major expansions of the education tax credit system this year. If you see Kate with a big grin on her face, that's why. And they got it through because they told everybody it was just technical corrections, but it actually was much, much more than that. But we haven't had luck, things we haven't had luck on, and that's what bugs me, is a lot of criminal justice related things. If you, unfortunately, there's the Criminal Justice Committee, both in the House and the Senate, are not well, not good members on it, with a few exceptions, such as Representative Byrd and Testerman is here and others. But there's some problems on those committees, and so the war on drugs is going full force. It's a complete waste of money, and similar sorts of things. We didn't get asset forfeiture this year like we did a couple years ago. We did some. We didn't get jury nullification expansion this year. A couple of years ago we got that. So there's things to be done, and so there are ways for you to help out our organization in all different kinds of ways. So first of all, a week from tomorrow, we're having the annual Liberty Dinner, which is where we have Legislator of the Year. If you didn't get enough of Frank Edelblut, and I think I haven't, he's going to be our keynote speaker there as well. And so that's a week from tomorrow. Go to nhliberty.org, or you can buy a ticket right here. And it's our major fundraiser for the year. That's how we help support candidates. It's at the Dairy Field. Other than that, you can join our organization. There are 3 different levels of membership: free, and for a little bit you can be a voting member, and for a little bit more you can be a lifetime member. And then you can volunteer to help us do the read the bills, vote on the bills, and so on. That can be done in the privacy of your home on your computer. No big deal. You can come and help me testify if you have time to go during the day to Concord. The other thing we do that I'm very proud of is we do legislative training. So the reason that John Byrd is such a great legislator is that he went to a year's worth of training with our organization to teach him how to speak in front of the legislature, how to be persuasive, how to talk in 3 minutes or less, that sort of stuff. And there's many other legislators that we've done this with. We'd like to do more, but it's very valuable. And so the people that are associated with our organization and yours hit above their weight in the legislature. They're the people who are on the floor arguing, talking, persuading, and so on. They're not just sitting back in their seats and pushing the button. So this is a terrific organization, and I hope you'll support us, and I hope I see you next week at our dinner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. All right. There are some folks that I need to bring up. Merit. The Assembly of the Common Law for New Hampshire. I have no idea what this is. I haven't had a chance to read the brochure, but I suspect we're about to learn something from our state constitution.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it. My name's Richard Merritt. I ran for sheriff here in Hillsborough County last year. Unfortunately, you don't see a star here, so I lost. I might try it again next year, I don't know. But I wanted to speak about education, because for the people who were already up here speaking about it, it's extremely important. And what I've found is, my career is in law enforcement. When I worked in law enforcement, unfortunately, I took an oath to defend this, the United States Constitution and the state constitution, and I had no clue what either one of them said. I find that that's true with a lot of people. And the reason that I asked to come up here is because it's our ignorance that is causing the problem in this country today. And nobody likes to be called ignorant. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you don't know. It's my contention that we don't know. I'm speaking in general terms, by the way. I know some of you do. This group is probably among the higher caliber. However, it is our ignorance, and another, unfortunately, detriment is our fear of our government. That's called tyranny, and I know you all know that. But I wanted to point out a couple illustrations. By the way, I'm the state coordinator for the National Liberty Alliance. I'm also with the Assembly of Common Law for New Hampshire. And the reason I'm doing this is because common law is the law of the land. Your state and federal constitution is a common law document. The Declaration of Independence is a common law document. All right? The Magna Carta is a common law document going back to 1215. We are all under common law in this country today, whether you like it or you don't like it. But the Bar Association, owned by the banks, are trying to get rid of it. Right here in this state, our legislature has done away with the court of record. A court of record has 4 premises. And by the way, everybody's bored with the law. This is the law. Statutes, codes, rules, regulations, they don't apply to the people. I'll prove it to you. There's literature on the desk over there. Please take it. Anybody wants to challenge me on it, I'll be happy to do that with you in a debate. I have a local access show in Manchester here, local access TV, cable TV. Just get in touch with me. Come on the show, we'll have a debate on it. In the United States Constitution, it says in Article 1, Congress shall meet no less than once per year in the month of December. Why do you think that is? It's because the Congress is supposed to rule over the government, the federal government, and that's it. We, the people, under Article 7 in your state constitution, are the sovereign. The sovereign is the ruler. We're under common law. Common law is not written. It basically stems from the Bible. Do no harm and you're not in trouble with anybody. Makes perfect sense, right? Why would we elect a part-time legislature to rule over us? Please tell me that. Please tell me that. Anybody tell me that, because it doesn't exist. It's crazy. both on the federal level, and I'd hold up the state constitution, but I don't have one, on the state level too. So what we are trying to do is educate people on common law, the law that affects you. By the way, they have general jurisdiction here in the state of New Hampshire, which is totally unlawful. It doesn't exist in the United States Constitution or the state constitution, other than the fact that the legislature gave it to the courts. Only the legislature can't give it to you can't invent a jurisdiction. You can't create a new law. Common law applies to the people. The legislature, statutes apply to them. They don't apply to me. One of the things that the state legislature said to me, and I'm trying to prove this to you, but I'm not going to bore everybody with a bunch of legal stuff. Everybody says, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. Well, I'm not either. But I've studied this book for years and years and years with a group of people. And we've taken it apart and we've defined words. A state legislature in New Hampshire 2 years ago at the State House said to me, well, the Second Amendment doesn't apply to us. That deals with the militia. And for the record, I want to tell you what that Second Amendment says. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, comma. That in and of itself is a fair statement, right? A well-regulated militia is necessary for the security of a free state. Then it goes on to say, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Doesn't say the right of the militia, it says the right of the people. I don't need a permit in the state of New Hampshire to carry a gun. I've been carrying one for 40 years, and I don't have a permit. And I don't care who knows it, because if a cop stops me for it, I will take him to court and I'll own his house. And I'm not trying to threaten anybody. That's the law. That's what this says. Not a cop, not a lawyer, not a judge. The law says it. And until we all of us, get through our ignorance, okay, by learning this little book, this federal constitution and the state constitution, we can overcome a lot of our problems, 80% of them. And the other thing is we got to get rid of central banks in the bar. Lawyers aren't bad. The bar is bad, okay? Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Please grab some paperwork over here to see if what I'm spouting here is true. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you want Ray next?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. I guess Ray Chadwick is next. The Granite State taxpayer. I had him on the list, but just not next.
She's taking control. You have to watch out here.
Thank you, Ray.
Yes, thank you, Jane. Good afternoon. My name is Ray Chadwick. I know a lot of you probably know me through Republican Party stuff. I'm here today because I'm just got elected chairman of the Granite State Taxpayers. Granite State Taxpayers is actually the oldest taxpayer organization in the state. It was founded by Mel Thompson, and we all remember him. Low taxes, the result of low spending. This is a nonpartisan organization, so I'm here as a nonpartisan. I deal equally with both political parties. I spent probably the last year going around to Republican committees talking about election law reform. And I would go to a Democrat committee if they ever asked. But amazingly enough, they don't. I wanted to follow up on a couple comments made earlier. Kim made the comment that it is important for us to stay engaged in this process. There are a lot of good things happening, and I would suggest, especially in the election law arena, that is because we have a Republican president and a Republican governor. Without that, it wouldn't be moving forward. She also mentioned the importance of us staying active. The election is not just a year and a half away. It is now. I want to talk about Senate Bill 3 for a few minutes. That's the one that for the first time requires us here, that people vote here, actually have to show proof that they live. That, by the way, is a requirement in 49 states and the District of Columbia. 47 of those states and the district actually require you to be a resident for a period of time before you vote. 27 states, it's 30 days. when we had the hearing in front of the New Hampshire Senate on Senate Bill 3, 30 groups and individuals spoke about the bill. 3 people. Secretary of State, the bill's sponsor, and myself for Granite State taxpayers. 3 people out of 30 spoke about the bill. So my point is, there is an opportunity for us all to stay engaged. Granite State taxpayers worked hard on that. Our organization, Dan made a great comment. He said we have different levels of membership too. You can get on the email list and volunteer for nothing. You can be a member and vote on things for $20. I have some forms over here on the table. Or go to our website, granitestatetaxpayers.org. The important part of that bill is that of those 30 groups, the other 27 of them are going to be lined up in court to turn that thing over. I have the ACLU filings in my hand. So this is not over, ladies and gentlemen. So I'd ask you to stay with us, join us. We testify on bills, we do those kinds of things. Now we focus not so much on the individuals violating the laws, but specifically on the laws in this state that are so lax that people can just show up here on election day and vote leaving no proof of residency or anything. Just sign a piece of paper. And we've sent a series of 91As at the Attorney General looking for people from past elections. But imagine the problem if you're trying to find someone, no picture, no license, no identification, no nothing. They vote and they're gone. That's going to change if we can keep this bill in place. I want to give you a couple other points. This is a fight for the understanding of the voters. We all talked about fake news. People hear the news all the time. We are the people who have the opportunity to make a difference. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Most people I talk to have no clue how easy it is to vote here, even if you don't live here. No clue. It's important for us to make them understand that and step away from all this argument from our adversaries that we're actually disenfranchising people. No, we're not. The Supreme Court has been clear on this. The state has the right to make sure that voters are bona fide residents of the jurisdiction. 2 other points and I'll get on because it's getting late. You often hear about the voters that come here, the Interstate Voter Compact. That's just been implemented. We've been arguing about that for years. 95,000 people are registered here, and in other states, 40,000 of them are en masse. That doesn't necessarily mean it's illegal, but those are places where people can take advantage. You've also heard the statistic, 6,540 people registered to vote in this state in the last election using an out-of-state driver's license. Well, most people you talk to, well, they just moved here, they didn't have time. Not quite. Close to 500 of them used an out-of-state driver's license to change registration from one town in New Hampshire to another, and 149 of them used an out-of-state driver's license to get back on the voter rolls after being purged. So, when I testified, they make big sport about the fact that President Trump had said that there was widespread voter fraud. They kept asking me, is there widespread voter fraud? Do you agree with the president? So I give you a talking point, and I hope you use it with your friends. I told them, look, this is a state that willingly allows people to vote here using credentials showing that they live in another state, and we track that data, and we allow it to happen, and we don't check if it's true, and we do that in numbers larger than the margins of victory in our elections. Now, it may not be voter fraud because it isn't the legal aspect of our law, but I damn well call it voter fraud. And I think y'all should too. One last thing. To give you an idea, they just love that quote. Oh, there's no voter fraud. There's no voter fraud. They keep saying it all the time. And it's our job to make sure that's not what the voters hear, that actually hear the facts. I'll give you one other thing to give you an idea how much some of the adversaries of these kinds of things work. And we have in our, well, it's public record, of course, but about 10 years ago, then Representative Dan Pierce sponsored House Bill 1616. I love this. I put this in op-eds on the website. That was a bill that, quote, this is the election laws comment, sought to assure college students that they need not fear registering to vote in New Hampshire by creating a fund to reimburse them for any lost financial aid. Now, you all know the stories. You know, you're from New York, you got a New York State Regent Scholarship. I actually had one when I was in college. And then, guess what? You registered to vote in New Hampshire. Too bad, you're no longer a resident under New York law, and you lose your $5,000 a year scholarship. This gentleman, who was a Democrat, of course, inserted a bill for the legislature to consider that taxpayers, you and I, folks, would make up the difference for any lost tuition that other states would give to students if they voted here. So you can tell there's some trolling for votes going on. Anyway, we support a lot of other things, but we spend a lot of time on the legal aspects of the election law issue here. If you're interested in helping us out, I'd welcome you to join the group. Go to our website, www.granitestatetaxpayers.org. And I got some forms here you can get on the email list. And I've probably no questions, but I'll sure be taking them. Okay, thank you for your time. And Ed, thank you for everything you're doing, Jade and Rick.
Nothing to see here.
See it.
No, nothing to see here.
Yes, nothing to see.
Nothing to see here. Of course, I will say this about Senate Bill 3 as someone who was a critic of it. Ray's right. However, they don't require you to actually prove who you are until at least between 10 and 30 days after you vote. So if you're one of those people who votes and runs, your vote's still counted. And that, no.
See you later.
Yeah, I read the bill.
I read the bill too.
Anyway, yeah, yes, and it's after the fact. All right, coming up next is Fran Wendelboe from the 603 Alliance. Fran. I guess what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get my sign. That way when I'm up here I can put my sign up. Everyone's coming up with their signs. I haven't seen that yet.
We know who you are.
Anyway, you know, we've heard some great stuff this afternoon about great issues. And you know what? Everything we heard doesn't matter, and it doesn't help, and it's not meaningful unless you have legislators that are going to put into effect what you believe in, what our Constitution believes in, what the Republican platform believes in, what the Liberty people believe in. If we can't get the bills passed, if we can't be protected on our Second Amendment rights and our liberties, then it's all for nothing. You know, we talk about having the House and the Senate and the governor's office and how wonderful it is. You know, I've been around for a long time. I've spent 14 years in the New Hampshire legislature. We had this situation once before. There was a super majority in the House and a super majority in the Senate and a Republican governor. And you know what we accomplished? Nothing. Because they were all too busy trying to prove who was more important instead of working together. We see it happening in Washington, D.C. right now. Donald Trump was not my first choice. But you know what? I'm damn glad he's there. And I'm very proud of him. I will admit, probably not a day goes by that I don't roll my eyes and say, gosh, I wish somebody would put a pause on his Twitter account. However, he's doing exactly what so many of us think needs to be done. If you read in the real media this week that when they talked to Syrian fighters, that they said that Donald Trump has the, well, you know what the word is, you know, to do what needs to be done. And that's what we need in New Hampshire. We need legislators who are going to do what needs to be done. Chris Sununu was not my first choice, but I've been pretty pleased with him. And we need to stick together, and we need to support them. But we need to grow the numbers, and that's what 603 Alliance is about. We have a new program called Initiative 18. We have program books over there that you can pick up. And what each and every one of you need to go from here with is the intent to recruit somebody to run in an open seat. We don't want to create primaries against good, strong Republicans. Dan mentioned the Liberty Alliance and their rating system. The House Republican Alliance does a very similar thing. Their ratings are based on bills, and they look at every single one of them, and they base their recommendations, it's called the Pink Sheet, on the New Hampshire Constitution and on the Republican platform. And if you vote the wrong way, you get dinged. That they do a rating sheet at the end of the year, tells you who were good voters and who weren't. We are going to target Republicans who vote more with the Democrats than they do with the Republicans. If you don't vote at least 70% of the time with Republicans, we think it should be 80, and we're hoping that it will become 80 when they realize that there are consequences if you don't vote the way the people want you to vote, that put you in office. If you don't, you're going to be a target, and that's who we want to recruit people to run against those people. You get the scorecard lists. The House Republican Alliance puts them up online. 2016 will be up shortly. I believe the Liberty Alliance will probably be putting theirs out at their dinner next week. So 603 Alliance is going to be urging people to start recruiting. Contact us with the names of potential legislators who think like us. And we are going to help them get elected. Our initial goal is 50 candidates. Now 50 out of 400 doesn't sound like much, but we lost right to work by what? How many votes?
A couple votes.
Couple of votes one year, a few more votes than that the next year. There's no reason why that should be able to pass with a Republican majority. So that's going to be one of the benchmarks, is right to work. But we're not just going to give lip service. You see, the New Hampshire GOP, they try, and they always give lip service that they're, no offense, Ray, that they're going to recruit candidates. But the difference is they're going to recruit candidates that have an R after their name. We don't just go out and say, are you a Republican, would you like to run for office? We're going to ask, what do you believe in? And we're only going to help those who believe in our Constitution, and we're not asking for perfection. The only time you have a candidate that you 100% agree with is if you're the candidate. So we're going to work with those candidates. We're going to do campaign training. We're not just going to say you need a website. We're going to actually set up the website for them. We're going to do fundraising for them. We're going to say, bring your Christmas card list, sit down, and fill out the letters right here with us, standing here, and we're going to go drop them in the mail. Money is the milk of politics, and if you don't support your local candidates, I take a lot, $5, $10, $15, but it's a big help. You don't realize that. We're not talking George Soros kind of money here. So we're going to train them. We're going to designate at least 10 rhinos that we're going after. We're going to designate at least 10 Democrats who have seats in districts that should be Republicans. And I think if we all work together, we can have a more conservative legislature. And when you have a more conservative legislators, then they elect more conservative leadership. And you can see when you have weak leaders, I mean, you just look to Washington, when you have weak Republican leaders who cave to the Democrats or get shaky on the important issues that matter to the voters, then you get milquetoast. We don't want any more milquetoast. And the way we do it is by sending more conservatives to Concord in the House. We're focusing on the House. So we ask for your support. We ask for your help in recruiting. Please take a brochure. Keep us in mind. Initiative 18 is the program for electing more conservative Republicans that will vote the way you want them to. And if you have any questions, please see us, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Fran.
Good stuff.
Very good stuff. I'd like to, just before I call up the next speaker, take a moment to recognize Right to Know New Hampshire. David Saad, the president of Right to Know New Hampshire, is in the house. Very, very important organization, folks. Last year, in this last year, the legislature, they were able to successfully get 5 bills passed that improved the Right to Know law, and one that we hope will lead to great improvements in the Right to Know law, and that's the establishment of a commission to study it and make recommendations on improving it. And so, David, thank you for the work that you do at Right to Know New Hampshire. And I believe our final speaker of the afternoon is former state rep, former gubernatorial candidate, Max Abramson. I get that right? There we go.
Thank you. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. And if it dies, nationalize it. I've been hearing that since Ronald Reagan told that joke back in the 1970s. And that seems to be what they're trying to do with health care in this country, with Obamacare, with 44 different state insurance mandates at the state level. The average state has 42 mandates. And we had a bill last year, House Bill 128, that simply supported a Republican platform idea that almost everyone agrees with, that individuals and businesses should be allowed to buy health insurance across state lines. And the opponents of that bill, which I had an amendment to open it up to everyone, the opponents of the bill, coming from the Democrat governor's office, Hassan's office, admitted that this bill would save about 5 to 10% on insurance costs. And they still opposed it, and there are 7 states that have that, where you can buy health insurance across state lines. The very word Constitution has a special meaning, though, in our society. We decided long ago that trading away precious liberty for some imaginary safety was a fool's bargain, and you lose both. For nearly 200 years, we stayed the course with a very small, constitutionally limited government, balanced budgets, free markets, and peace where we could have it, all resulting in low inflation, low unemployment, low interest rates, and a doubling of living standards every other generation for 200 years. We know from economic study and from our own recent history that anytime government taxes, subsidizes, regulates, mandates, litigates, licenses, or controls any activity, prices rise and performance suffers. The truth is that before government began meddling in healthcare, now the most heavily regulated, subsidized industry on earth, medical insurance was affordable, and it was left up to the free markets and to private charity. Before government began regulating and subsidizing university, college was affordable. Millions of young Americans could work their way through school, graduating into a strong, vibrant job market with little or no debt. Before government began meddling in energy, transportation, housing, and every other part of our economy, the American worker enjoyed a wide array of living wage jobs with medical and dental coverage and even a pension. And before government got into the average paycheck, one paycheck was enough to support an entire household. That household mortgage paid off in 10 years, not 30 years like today, often before the little ones even entered school. Before the war on crime, Lyndon Johnson's war on drugs, war on poverty, and even the war on illiteracy, brave Americans handled problems at the local level, in our own communities, where you have some knowledge of the person with whom you're dealing. Every time Congress has stepped up Lyndon Johnson's war on drugs, crime has gone up, not down. Drug use has tripled. Death rates have soared. Federal, state, and local taxes once took 10 to 12% of the average household's income, as late as the 1950s and early 60s. The total cost of federal, state, and local taxes, regulations, regulatory compliance, insurance mandates, deficits, Obamacare mandates, and tax compliance costs now eat up 62% of our nation's economy. We're controlled today by six-figure elites in Washington, D.C., and by its 50 microcosms that imagine themselves to be better informed, better educated, and eager to run our lives. They micromanage our schools, our businesses, our towns, and even the doctor's office. Facing $20 trillion in debt, $70 trillion in unfunded entitlement obligations, who will pay for the nanny state? As of a few years ago, 1/3 of the New Hampshire Highway Fund was being diverted to DHHS and the judiciary, the latter of which houses 20 times as many inmates as it did 40 years ago, at a cost of $35,000 per year per inmate. Nanny state is too kind a term. I said on the floor of the House that Nurse Ratched state is more like it. Nurse Ratched was that terrible woman from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. For 10 generations, our ancestors have fought and even died for this great country. Yet the same politicians who are trading those rights and freedoms in backroom deals on the 3rd floor of the State House, whether they be Rockefeller Republicans or Rockefeller Democrats, have broken the public trust by entering politics to serve themselves and the agenda of their masters. The same Democrats and rhinos keep voting to give Planned Parenthood's regional affiliates political action offices, not clinics, and the public sector union officials billions of your tax dollars each year. In turn, much of that same tax money goes back into the campaigns of the same Democrats and rhinos. Public schools now cost $18,000 per year to push leftist advocacy on each pupil. Will you use Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers' yellow sheet and LibertyBallot.com's recommendations before each September primary and remind your friends to do so? Will you now consider running for State House to join the 150 or so who are fighting for what our veterans fought for? We lost 7 State House seats in Rockingham County alone just for lack of candidates last year. With 4 more seats, we could have stopped Jasper. With 1 more seat, we could have stopped the worst of Obamacare. If you're willing to campaign, to make phone calls, to stand and hold campaign signs for those willing to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all of us, from the first heartbeat to the last, you will achieve more to protect freedom than perhaps anything else that you could do in your lifetime. Thank you very much. God bless.
And apparently, we have one more speaker, because there was an oversight somewhere. And as I pointed out David Saad from Right to Know New Hampshire, because after I talked to him, he said, "Oh, I'm not on the list." Apparently, he was supposed to be. So, without further ado, we're going to let David Saad of Right to Know New Hampshire talk to us about our right to know.
Thank you, Rich. Well, it's interesting you use the word oversight, because those of you that are familiar with the Right to Know law, and maybe some of you aren't, and so I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about Right to Know New Hampshire as an organization. We're a nonpartisan group that focuses strictly on the Right to Know law in New Hampshire, which is engaged in trying to promote open government and transparent government within the state. And this all ties into Part 1, Article 8 of the New Hampshire Constitution, where it states, "All power residing in and being derived from the people, all magistrates and officers of the government are their substitutes and agents, and at all times accountable to them." So while there's been a lot of people, for those of you that have come here year after year, many candidates or wannabe candidates come here and tell you why you should vote for them, and that's all well and good. I think the important thing is whoever gets elected, you as citizens need to continue with your responsibility to be engaged and stay on top of what they are doing in and hold them accountable. So in the state of New Hampshire, how do you hold them accountable? How do you know what they're doing? We have a law, it's called the Right to Know law, it's RSA 91A. This law focuses on open meetings and access to governmental records. So as you're trying to follow what your elected representatives are doing on your behalf, whether you like what they're doing or you don't like what they're doing, the way that you can stay and hold them accountable is by investigating their actions that they're taking on your behalf. And you have a right to follow those actions, whether it's at a public meeting or it's through records that they are creating, and through the Right to Know law gives you access to that information. So as an organization, we focus on the Right to Know law as advocates, and some of the things that we do, a big thing, and Rich kind of pointed to it, we spend a lot of time drafting legislation to improve the Right to Know law in the state. So our ability to have access to open records and open meetings, there's room for improvement, and so we work on improving the law. We draft legislation, we get sponsors for those bills, we go down to Concord, we testify for those bills. We also testify against bills that others have put forth that are trying to water down the law. Another thing that we do is education and training. We have on our blog, and if you go to Right to Know New Hampshire or righttoknownh.org, we have on our blog a training guide on the Right to Know law, so you can get one, learn more about the law, and two, if you want to share it with your local public officials because maybe they're not following the law on your behalf, you can share that with and help educate them. We also provide assistive service, so if you're in your community, you're running into issues with your local government or county government or state government in which you're not getting access to the records that you have a right to get access to. You're not having access to the meetings you feel that you should have access to, and you're running into difficulty in that. You can contact us and we will help you navigate some of the law and also give you some ideas, suggestions on how to go back and improve that situation for yourself. So those are some of the things that we do. We have a sign-up sheet here if you'd like to sign up. It's free to be a member. We have monthly meetings at the Coalition New Hampshire Taxpayers Office in Concord. We'd welcome you to come in and take part in a meeting, and we're always looking for new members, so feel free to join up. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Rich. And Ed, is Ed still in the house?
Ed is packing up the van, which there are still some sandwiches and food left over here. If you'd like to take them, take them. They can't do anything with the subs. They can't donate them. They ain't going to put them in Ed's refrigerator. Ed might feed them to his... I'm sure they're just fine. And if you don't, Ed's going to end up feeding them to his pigs. So as I bring this to a close, on behalf of the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, I want to thank everybody for the time they spent to be with the here at the conservative family reunion that takes place each year. It has been my honor and privilege to host the event, or to MC the event, on behalf of the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. I'm Richard Gerard. You can tune in every Monday through Friday from 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, or for those of you who live into the region, probably the rest of you left, you can visit gerards.com. Have a great summer, everyone. Hope to see you between now and next week. Remember, work there, get the roles elected, but before those things come, and by the way, big elections in the city of Chester this year, keep an eye, it's going to be a dogfight all the way up on the ballot. Please support people in office, because they get a beating.